This morning, we're very happy to welcome to Seacoast Currents Wes Golomb, who is the author of Warm and Cool Homes. Good morning, Wes.
Good morning.
I'm going to introduce you a little bit, Wes, to our listeners. You have been involved with energy your adult life. You are a certified energy auditor, taught environmental science, worked for the Public Utilities Commission administering energy codes. You are on the board of the New Hampshire Sustainable Energy Association and a whole bunch of other things. But I just want to let people know a little bit about your background. So the book's complete title is Warm and Cool Homes, Building a Comfy, Healthy, Net Zero Home You'll Want to Live in Forever. So, Wes, let's start out the conversation with how do we define a net zero house? What is a net zero house?
A net zero home is a home that generates all the energy it needs so it doesn't require energy from the outside.
Okay, so then let's start out with what are ways of doing that? How can a homeowner generate heat, power, electricity, whatever, without being connected to any kind of a grid or anything?
First of all, let me just say that most of these people are connected to the grid, and they use the grid as a battery, but let's get into that later.
Okay.
I guess the first thing to say is you've got to have your efficiency vegetables before you have your solar cookies.
I saw that quote in your book, Wes, and I wrote it down, and I was going to ask you about it, so thank you for bringing that up. What does that mean when you say you must eat your efficiency vegetables before you have your solar cookies?
Let's look at it another way. If you were in charge of keeping a bucket full and there were holes in the bucket, what would you do? Would you get a bigger hose or would you fill up the holes?
I think I would make sure that bucket was completely solid, so none of whatever was supposed to be in there would come out.
Leaked out.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping you'd say, and that's what makes sense. And indeed, our houses use a lot more energy than they need to, and a lot of it is wasted. And so in order to limit how much energy we have to generate, we do everything we can to minimize our consumption of it. And a major source of heat loss in houses is air leaking in and leaking out. And that causes other problems too. And so one of the first things we want to do is look at the whole envelope of the house. The envelope being the place that separates heated from unheated space. And we want to make sure that envelope is both well insulated and air sealed. And that's probably the biggest thing we can do in terms of limiting energy consumption, at least for heat.
So we're talking about insulation. We're talking about sealed windows that don't leak, double panes with various kinds of gases in between them,
yes, but what we're talking about are sealing up the little leaks that happen where two pieces of sheathing, for example, meet, or where a big place in a lot of houses is where the concrete sill and the wood meets, because concrete and wood don't expand and contract at the same rate, so you tend to get gaps there at the sill, and you get a lot of air moving through.
So what you're saying is people need to have an energy audit on their homes.
They need to have an energy audit, or there's plenty of resources out there to figure out how to at least begin to approach doing it yourself. One of them, by the way, is my book, a shameless plug.
Go right ahead. That's okay, Wes. Yeah, the book is good. The book is completely thorough. You've gone through everything, and it's all very well illustrated. and very clearly put. I showed this to my husband, who is all about conserving energy, and he went through this and said, yes, this is really good. I think that the author has hit every note here. I know we had an energy audit on our house, and I think you have done this for a living. You've audited homes for energy.
Well, let me just clarify that. It's kind of a funny story. For about, 5 years, the state of New Hampshire certified energy auditors. This was back in the 80s. Mm. And I got the second certification. But yes, I've been energy auditing, and I ran a 2-year degree program at Lakes Region Community College where we trained people for doing this kind of work.
So what do you look for when you audit a house? What do you do?
Well, the first thing you do is you look to see what the envelope actually is. Where is the envelope? For example, a lot of people will insulate the ceiling of the basement when, in fact, the natural envelope of the house is actually the basement walls. Mm-hmm. And you can't, you've got a door that opens and lots of holes between the basement and the first floor. You get a lot of leakage through there. So one place that you might see is that, as I say, the floor is insulated when you really need to be air sealing and insulating the basement itself, which is effectively part of the heating space. Similarly, an attic, there's often places where there's spots that aren't effectively air sealed and insulated. So you look for things like that. The next biggest thing you could do is what's called a blower door test. And a blower door is a huge fan with a pressure gauge on it. It's called a manometer. Remember the Muppets manometer?
Yeah, okay, it's a good way of remembering it.
So a manometer measures pressure. And what this fan does is it depressurizes the house. And the idea is to get the house depressurized to a specific amount below the outside, and then you measure how much air is being sucked through. Okay, think about this. If you're trying to suck air through a straw, and that straw has nothing in it, it's going to be easy to suck through. But if you compress that straw some and try sucking through it, it'll take more pressure, or with the same amount of pressure, you'll get less air moving through. And this is what we measure, and through a convoluted mathematical formula, they come up with a measurement called air changes per hour. And this is a crucial measurement in how efficient a house is going to be. I think the New Hampshire Energy Code is around 6 or 7 now, air changes per hour. The national code is around 3 air changes an hour. The houses that I'm looking at in my book are mostly all less than 1 air change per hour. One major possible exception to that. So these houses are very, very tight. They're, as I say, this means that the volume of air changes only less than once an hour. So please ask me the next logical question.
Okay, my next logical question would be, if you put the fan in and you determine that it's kind of leaky, what do you do? How do you determine where the leaks are, and how do you stop the leaks?
Okay.
Is that the next logical question?
I thought you were going to ask me, a lot of people at this point ask, but if you're making the house so tight, doesn't it need to breathe?
Oh, it's so funny, Wes, because that's another question I wrote down here. Yeah, you're like reading my mind.
Let's get back to the first one, if you'd like.
Yeah.
So you find out how leaky the house is, and then there's several ways of doing it. The best way is just to go up and put your hand. The best way, if it's a new house, is to do this test before the walls are on. Now, with retrofits, with existing houses, we obviously don't have that option. So what you need to do is find out where the air is leaking. One way to do that, if you have the equipment, is an infrared camera, because you'll see, like on a cold day, you'll see the air, where the air is moving in and out. And by the way, my book also comes along with a series of videos.
Yeah.
And in the videos, there'll be a section where a blower door test is done, and we actually show people this. The book is written for people with no experience, people who are just interested in saving money and energy, or, have an ecological reason to do this. But anyway, to get back to it, the first thing to do is to find the leaks. If you don't have an infrared camera, actually the best way to do it is to get your hands right up there and feel where the air is leaking. You start with a room, and you have the blower door going, and and first of all, usually your blower door is going to be attached to a human being who's been trained in this.
Mm-hmm.
But if somehow you're doing it yourself, you would maybe go to a room and close the door, or open the door while the blower door is going, and feel how much it gets slammed shut. If it's pulled tight right away, it's leaking a lot.
Yeah, Wes, we had this done on our home. That's probably why I'm asking you about it, because I've seen this done, and there were with that infrared, there were a number of cold spots that were determined in our home. And sure enough, not that I had been doing this, but when someone says, that's a cold spot, so you go over there and you put your hand on the wall, and oh my gosh, that's right, it is a lot colder than other spots on the wall. So once we determined the cold spots, we had then insulation pumped into the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, it has made a big difference in our home. Our home was built in the 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that insulation made a huge impact.
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, think of insulation and air sealing like you would going out on a windy day. If you have just a windbreaker and it's cold, the windbreaker is not going to protect you well. If you just have a sweater and the air, can move right through the sweater, no matter how big the sweater is, how heavy it is, it's not really going to do the trick. But put those two things together, the insulation and the air sealing being the sweater and the windbreaker, and you get a synergy, and that's what we want in a house, is that synergy. We want to limit the heat loss. Another area you mentioned earlier was windows, and windows are, it's always a call. Some windows it's clear you got to replace them. Other windows, a lot of time, the biggest issue is the air leaking in around them. But for new houses, or if you're replacing windows, the cost of triple pane windows has just come down dramatically in the last few years, or the cost relative to double pane, thermal pane windows. And we hear owners saying, I can stand right by the windows when it's minus 5 degrees out, minus 10, and it feels like every place else in the house.
I've also heard, first thing I want to say is, this has a huge impact on heating costs.
Well, it does.
I mean, this is not just, it feels cozy. No, we're talking dollars and cents here, too.
So I followed 4 net zero houses and 1 net zero ready house, meaning they don't have solar.
Yeah, here in the book, you've mentioned these houses in the book. You go into great detail. You should have pictures. So you really describe these, may I say, beautiful houses, and they are net zero.
But here's the key thing to get back to your question about cost.
Yeah.
none of these houses spend more than $500 a year.
Yeah.
To heat, cool, and electrify.
That's huge. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great savings right there. Wes, I've also heard that you can do this with mobile homes. It doesn't have to be like a home. It can be like a mobile home, and that can also be retrofitted.
It sure can. BTUs don't know from mobile home or residence or commercial. We've got the laws of, heat movement that are in charge here, and they're pretty standard no matter what. The materials are different, but the concepts all remain the same, which, by the way, also goes for the concepts of retrofitting and building a new house.
Mm. Okay, I'm going to talk about that. But first of all, back to your quote. Doesn't a house have to breathe?
Okay, so inanimate objects don't breathe. The people inside the house have to breathe. And what we want is not adequate, we want proper ventilation, good ventilation, healthy ventilation. But that doesn't mean more is always better. So we get to a point, and above that, we're just losing heat and air, and there's other issues. So what we want to do is tighten the house up and then control the ventilation. Mm-hmm. So most of these houses have heat exchangers. They have air-to-air heat exchangers, which take in cold air, which is heated up by the air moving out, and it replaces the fresh air. So you have constant fresh air in these houses, but you have a limited amount of infiltration and heat loss. And by the way, that heat loss does more than cost you money and make you chilly. You may have noticed if your house is very dry in the winter, what happens is cold, dry air comes in at the bottom of the house, and it's warmed up by your heating system, which has to work to warm it up. It then, since it's dry and warm, it can grab a lot of moisture, and it grabs the moisture out of your house and continues to rise. Heat rises, or cold air actually sinks. Then it finds the holes in the top half of your house and takes that moisture out with it. So it makes for houses to be very dry, and if you have air leaks and you have heat hitting the roof, that's what causes the snow to melt and cause ice dams. So all these things can be avoided by making the house tighter. And by the way, one more thing I got to say about that is that it's been reported to me by several of the owners of these houses that their health has improved, that they're not having asthma attacks and migraine headaches. So that's another benefit of this style of building.
So this is a health issue as well. Wes, let's talk about these houses. You highlight, I don't know, is it about 4 houses here in the book? And how they're manufactured or retrofitted. And, so I kind of wanted to hear a little bit about, let's take one of these houses. Do you have a favorite one? There's the Kleiman house, and there's this.
They've all become like children to me.
Yes. Well, your babies. Well, you've got beautiful babies, and there's the Wallace Brill home that you've highlighted here in the book. So is there? So you can't pick one that you love more than the others. I get it.
Let me tell you about three styles. There's really three. I won't say extremes, but there's a range of houses here. And let's start. We have a series of houses that have double walls. That means there's 2 walls built about 10 inches apart, filled with cellulose, usually, so that there can't be any conduction through the wall. That's another way that heat is lost. And so that's one style of walls. A second style is the Burns house, and this house, they're favorites in different ways. I grew up, studying this stuff in the 70s and whatnot, and these people are the real life back to the land people, and they've been doing it for 20 years. I met them in 2005, I think, 2006, and they built this straw bale house from straw from local farmers. The family, they had a young family at the time, and they all built it together. I don't believe they ever had a mortgage on the house. They live on a minuscule amount of solar. I think it's like 2 kilowatts, something really small. Mm. They cook with wood. They still do. They've got a separate summer kitchen so they can do it without heating the house. They live a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Chosen lifestyle. They don't view that they're going without they're not going without something they want. They just are very minimalistic, I guess you'd say. And they're wonderful, sweet, kind people, and I just adore them, and their house is beautiful, and I love sitting in their, one of my favorite things was sitting in the basement and having a horse come right up to the window.
That's nice. And you're talking about Andrea and Jeff Burns, and they are the owners of this straw bale home. So they have insulated this house with straw.
It's a great insulator, as it turns out.
Wow. Well, the house is beautiful. You've got a picture of it on page 116, and it's beautiful. It's full of windows. So this must be a light, bright home to sit in. And it looks like the views out every window are stunning. And it says, I mean, they heat with wood and passive solar, and they've got, some photovoltaics, and, it's pretty impressive, and, really a beautiful home.
What I tried to do in this book is pick houses that exhibited different concepts in the range of things you can do, if you want to build a house like this. So one of the things that was unique or was the most pronounced in the Burns house is the passive solar design.
Yeah.
Which is basically you put a lot of windows to the south, you put an overhang so that the sun will be shaded in the summer. Their house is cool in the summer, and then you put what's called thermal mass, which is a material that absorbs and stores heat in a place where the sun's going to hit it. And then the other thing they do, they don't have triple pane windows. What they have are window treatments, like I don't know if they're window quilts, but they pull them down every night and raise them up every morning. And that brought up the old adage that passive solar is for active people.
Yeah, that's great. By the way, here's a great photograph that you took looking out those basement windows, and there's a horse right in front of you. So that picture is in the book too, in case people want to see that. Another thing I thought that was interesting, they left a hole in the plaster in a little obscure part of the house, that just to show folks that the straw inside the walls. I thought that was great that they left that little hole there.
A lot of people wonder about the longevity. And Andrew was telling me they did some remodeling to the kitchen. They even remodeled straw bale houses, I guess, after 20 years. And they cut into one of the straw bales, and it was like pristine. They've got it's stucco on the outside, so that nothing gets into it. It's watertight. There's nothing in there for animals to eat, and so. Yes.
Yeah, that was one question that, of course, is asked. Do tiny critters get in there or not?
No, it's not. There's nothing for them to eat, and they've had no trouble with critters at all. And by the way, this is unusual for the Northeast, but this style house has been been used for thousands of years. At the other extreme is the last house I profile,
the Bingham home in Barrington, or was there
right? And this is the high tech.
Yeah.
And before we get into this, before we get into his house, could we get back to the solar cookies part of the quote, if we could?
Yes. Okay. So, before we eat our efficiency vegetables, we have to have our solar cookies. So let's talk about solar cookies.
We've eaten them already. We've made tight houses that are less than 1 air change per hour. We've built them with either double walls or straw bales, or in the case of the Bingham house, in structural insulated panels, which I'll explain in a minute. And so we have our efficiency vegetables. And there's one more piece to the puzzle that several of these houses have used, and that is a heat pump, which is just think of it like a refrigerator. And a heat pump efficiently takes heat from one place and moves it to another. In this case, in the winter, it's taking heat from the outside. Yes, there's heat in the air, even though it's cold, and moving it inside. And in the summer, you push a button and it does the opposite. It takes heat from the inside and moves it outside. And typically, in most cases, you put 1 unit of electricity in this case generated by solar, and you get 3 units thereabout out of heat energy. So this is a very efficient way of leveraging energy, electric energy, to heat. And so several of the houses just use this system, the heat pump, and the Kleiman house uses geothermal, which is really a heat pump, but they're getting the heat from water, which is below ground and remains warmer all year.
Well, we have a heat pump in our house. We have 2 mini splits, one downstairs and one upstairs. And what you say is absolutely true. These things are remarkable. They heat beautifully. And in the summer, they air condition beautifully. And since we've got these things hooked to our solar panels, it's all sunshine doing the work. The sunshine is heating us, and the sunshine is actually which blows my mind. It's air conditioning through sunshine. Okay, mind blown, but it works, and I can only recommend those heat pumps. They are miraculous.
They're great. They're really game-changing technology. But in the Bingham house, they took it a step further. Jack Bingham had been doing research on trying to keep greenhouses warm at UNH. Mm-hmm. And as I understand, he failed, not miserably, but the problem was that they'd collect a lot of heat, but they'd lose it by 3 o'clock in the morning on, nights like we've had recently.
Yeah, and glass is not a good insulator anyway.
That's right. So what he did was he built a house around the greenhouse. Well insulated, well air sealed, and he put a storage tank in the basement and below the greenhouse. It's an insulated tank, and he put 2 heat pumps at the top of the greenhouse, where on a sunny day like yesterday, it was probably 80 or 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And so there's times in February where instead of getting 3 times the boost, it's called COP, coefficient of performance. You put 1 unit of energy in, and he's getting in the range of 8 units out of heat, all from his solar panels. And by the way, he's also charging his electric car.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we're doing the same. Can you tell us about passive solar with plastic tubes filled with water? I saw that on one of the houses that you talked about.
Are you talking about, this was at the Forest Society and there's big tubes behind the guy standing there?
Yes.
Okay, that's the Forest Society. And those tubes are made by a company, I think it's still in business, called Calwall in Manchester. And those tubes are the thermal mass. Water actually has a very good thermal mass, which means it has a very good heat capacity is the word I'm looking for. Its ability to store and hold heat. As a matter of fact, they list water as one, so it's the measure that we measure other heat capacities by. So in the Forest Society, they've got windows that shine light in on those and heats them up, and then they radiate the heat back out. Those water tubes radiate the heat back out to heat the place when there's no sunlight.
Wow. People always say that storing energy has always been the issue with these alternative energy styles. Is that still a problem, storing energy? I mean, it seems to me that technology would have improved enough for us to be able to store this stuff better.
Technology is improving dramatically, and it's better than it was. A residential battery is still very expensive and still does about the equivalent, as I understand it, of a generator. So this is why net metering is so important.
Yes. Oh, I did ask about that. What is net metering? Let's explain that to the folks.
Net metering is essentially using the grid as a battery. So rather than having a battery on my house, when generating more electricity through my solar that I'm using, it's run back to the grid and the neighbors use it. And
you get credit.
It runs my meter backwards, get credits for it, yes. And there's a lot of controversy about this. I tell you emphatically I'm in favor of net metering and it should be expanded, but utilities don't necessarily see it that way. But in fact, when you think about it, when's the time when people are going to put energy back onto the grid?
On a sunny day in the winter.
On a sunny day, well, in the winter, but how about on those August hot sunny days in the summer to fire up the Merrimack power plant because those are, but instead got all this solar or a potential there I'm putting back on the grid aren't going very far. They're going to prop up, if you will, to supply. So this actually makes the grid stronger and more resilient. And the more we can do that, we have to fire up the Merrimack coal-fired station, which, by the way, in 1 hour, puts out more carbon emissions than you do in 25 years.
Yeah, I want to Wes about. By the way, we're speaking to Wes Golomb this morning, who has written a how-to book, pretty much about insulating your home and making it net zero, and it's called Warm and Cool Homes: Building a Comfy, Healthy, Net Zero Home You'll Want to Live in Forever. Wes, these houses that you talked about in the book, are they all devoid of fossil fuels?
No. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I think the only one that's, well, they're all still on, all but one of them are still on the grid, so there's that fossil fuel connection for anything they're using from the grid, which is pretty minimal.
Yeah.
The fifth house, the Net Zero Ready house, they have a gas cook stove and they have a gas fireplace. And so that's the fossil fuels they're using.
Mm-hmm. That's minimal.
Well, it's very interesting. It is minimal, but when you look at the cost of what they spend without solar, and they have just as tight a houses as several of the other ones, quite tight. They're spending $3,100 more a year, or last year, to heat the place, to heat and electrify the place.
So is it easier to kind of net zero a new construction, or is retrofitting an older house, is that just as easy, or?
They both have challenges. To be honest, it's harder when you got somebody else's work that you're trying to look at and improve on. But it's absolutely doable. I did an energy retrofit on my house, which was about 25 years old at the time, and I cut my energy consumption. I'm not net zero by any means, but I cut it way down, and then put solar on, which provides, I guess, 90% of my electricity. I've seen other houses on my YouTube channel. I have a profile of a house in Connecticut where it was an 1890s house, and they completely retrofitted it, and I don't know that they're net zero, but it's pretty close. Another one we're actually making videos about right now, Bob Irving, who built two of the houses and worked with me on both the book. I got to give a shout out to him. His house is 1800s farmhouse in central New Hampshire, and he's retrofitted it. He's got solar and heat pumps, and it's really tight and comfortable, and it maintains the charm of a 100-year-old house.
I think, I'm kind of keeping an eye on the clock, Wes. Is there anything that I have not covered today that you would like to talk about? Anything I've missed that you feel important to mention?
Well, if I could take a page from Click and Clack and have a shameless self-promotion.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
The book is available on my website, which is warmandcoolhomes.com. That's the book website. My own personal website. And I keep saying the book, but it's a book and a video series. And the video series comes with 12 videos. And we get out there and show you exactly what we're talking about, trying to, bring it home as much as possible. I will say that when I was on the board of the Sustainable Energy Association, we used to do green building open houses where people would come and check out houses that had energy efficient features. And that was really very effective. And it was in that spirit that I wrote the book and these videos, and hoping that we could get people to see, if you could see that this can be done, and that it's beneficial in so many ways, to our environment. It's beneficial economically. It's beneficial for health reasons. It's beneficial for comfort reasons. And to me, it's an ethical thing. I feel like it's really important that I do my part, that I leave the woodpile a little higher than I found it. And that said, let me just say that the book is also available both as a paperback and as an ebook on Amazon. And if you check out my website, which is theenergygeek.org. We're going to have a freebie download day in the near future. And if you want the book for free, we're going to have a special day. I'm not saying when yet because I'm not allowed to, but it's coming up soon. And one more thing. I feel like a Ronco commercial. Just wait. Just one more thing. I just also want to give a shout out to Cal Clunan, who did most all of these drawings and a lot of diagrams.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. Cal was absolutely indispensable in this, and thank you.
Well, that is one of the reasons why the book is so good, because it's got really kind of clear, understandable illustrations, and it's written in a very understandable way. You don't get so into the weeds that no one's going to understand what you're talking about. It's well put together. I would say if you're interested in a net zero home, that the book is invaluable. So congratulations on it. I think you've done a great job, and congratulations to everyone involved. Your photography is great, and these homes are beautiful. And I think it's a really good asset if folks are interested in putting a home together like this.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And if people have questions about this, they're welcome to contact me at theenergygeek1@gmail.com.
theenergygeek1@gmail.
Correct.
Great.
And we're happy. My friend Bob works with me, and we're happy to, try. We just want people to do this. It's good for everybody.
It is good for everybody. On just a quick personal note, Wes, one of the reasons I think why my husband and I are into this is that our son was in the military, and he spent a year and a half in Iraq with the military because of the oil fields there. And let's be honest, that's why we were there. And, if we didn't need all this, we wouldn't have to be sending our young men and women into dangerous places. So I think there's a political aspect to this as well. And and that's something that means a lot to people as well.
I'm actually trying to write about this because oil has been discovered. Every major war we've been in had an oil component to it.
Of course. Yes.
Every single one. And the concept, it's in my back of my head for years. And of course, I think humans will find something else to fight about. But if we got rid of the source of so much of our fighting, wouldn't that ratchet things down a little bit? One can only hope.
One could only hope. Wes Golomb, thank you so much for joining us today on Seacoast Currents. Really appreciate it, and congratulations on the book.
Thanks, Wes. Great job.
So much. Really appreciate it.
Great.
Okay.
Bye, Wes.
Bye-bye.
That was Golomb, and he's written this book, Warm, Cool Homes,
Yes.
Comfy, Healthy, Net Zero Home.
Right.